All right, welcome back to Taking the Field with Stevie Mack. I'm here with Jordan Johnson and Phil Rothermick. We've covered a lot here on this episode. We've got one final segment we got to get to. We're going to get some of your thoughts in the mix, also preview a little bit of that Baltimore weekend coming up on June 25th. So the first one for you guys, the first comment we got here was from our buddy Coach Shrek on Twitter. He says, is Andy Towers on the hot seat if Chaos lose to the Redwoods next weekend? Also, who is most likely to get traded this season? So, Jordan, we can go ahead, start with you on this one. He says, is Andy Towers on the hot seat if Chaos lose to Redwoods next weekend?
Is Andy Towers on the hot seat? I wouldn't say so quite yet because he doesn't have his full team. And I will give him that. He's missing a lot of Canadians. You can talk about Austin Stotts. We're not going to get into that, but obviously he's a piece of the puzzle. And frankly, look, you go back to 2019 and we really saw what a job Andy Towers and his staff can do. And, coming back into the bubble, this is just a group that potentially it could be like last year where they just need a few games to get together. Will it be too little too late? I don't know, but I certainly wouldn't put them on the hot seat quite yet.
I would say about the same. Last year they lost every game, but then they made the championship. So it's like if you look at that, all of a sudden you're kind of like, well, what does that even balance out to? It's hard to figure that out. And this year, yeah, he's 0-3 at this point. And maybe by the end of the season, if this trend continues, maybe, but while this might not be totally important, he is a fan favorite. The players love him. He's got a lot of gusto. I think it's tough, but however this year goes, I think he does have at least one more year. I don't see them finishing up with a bad record and them still pulling the plug at the end of this year. I think he's got another shot next year. And at that point in time, I think it will be a do or die. But, I don't know about this year. I think he's safe until next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just to get my thoughts real quick on Shrek's question here, is he? I don't think so, because you guys kind of touched on it. He won the regular season championship 2019. He did go 0-4 last year, but was able to make the championship. So you figure he's got the regular season championship. He's got a championship game appearance. I was just trying to do the math in my head real quick. His overall record is somewhere around 18 and I would say 7 by now. So not a bad overall record so far. If he can win the next 3, actually that would be if he won the next 3, I should say, I believe is what his record would be. So if they are, like you said, Phil, if they are able to turn around, he would have the regular season championship, the championship game appearance, and he'd also have a pretty solid overall record too, despite going 0-4 during the pool play of 2020. So is he on the hot seat? Not necessarily. If they don't win a lot of games this year and they continue the slide that they're on, then maybe you go into 22 saying he could be, depending on how the year starts for them. If they go 0-3 to start next year, then yeah, I think you can really start to have that conversation. But I think it's just too soon to tell right now. And then real quickly, to get to his part 2 of his comment, is who is the most likely to get traded this season? And if we want to go more specifically, we could say, who do you think is the first person to get traded this season?
Well, I'll say this. I'm not a big trade guy. I'm not, it's not really where my mind goes, but I will say one team that could use an upgrade, and let me finish because this is going to sound insane. Drew Simino for the Cannons at faceoff. He's at 43%. The team's good. Lyle's amazing. Rabel's doing great. But call it what it is. You got to get the ball to them before they can score, right? And the problem is when they're playing the Whip Snakes is he wasn't – now he's playing Nardella. I'll give him that. But if you look at someone like Atlas who has Baptiste and now the Woods who have TD, and they're actually able to make that a battle. And I felt like Nardella was pretty handily getting those done. And if you're going to get to the championship, you're going to play a team like that, you put a lot of pressure on the defense to get the ball back after the faceoff is lost. If it's playing make it, take it, which a lot of times the Whip Snakes do, if that's the case, you're putting a lot of pressure on the defense to somehow get a stop and get the ball back to their offense. So I don't know that he will be traded because I don't know how you can get someone. The elite face-off guys will go nowhere ever because every team is looking for an elite guy, and there's only so many that exist in the game, period. College, pro, anyone. So I think that this has to be their guy. But it is a position that I think if there was any way to somehow improve, this would be it for Cannons.
So you talk about the first player that could be traded, and it's kind of a tricky question because, frankly, I do not think there will be a ton of trades this year. I think it's going to be easier for teams to go get a guy from the player pool more than it is to be trading assets. With that being said, a guy that I would really keep my eye on is Tucker Durkin. A lot of teams are going to need a defenseman, and Ben Ruby, or depending on how this year goes, he still could be in the process of maybe getting younger guys, getting more assets in the future. And Tucker Durkin is a great leader. He's a great locker room guy. But as Ben Rubiger showed, he's not afraid to trade anybody. And it doesn't seem like anybody that's named other than the name Costabile seems to be untouchable, right? Costabile's the only guy who I would really look at that roster and say, yeah, he's probably untouchable right now. Even Baptiste, you never know if Ben Rubier could go down that road. But there are a lot of defensive needy teams in the league, whether you talk about the Cannons, the Chaos, potentially the Chrome. A guy like Tucker Durkin, you know what you're going to get when you get him. You're getting a number one defenseman, maybe a borderline 2 if you even want to make that argument. So you're getting one of the best defenders in the game, and you're getting a great locker room guy. So for a team to go say, hey, if we have to trade assets, what you're getting in a guy like Tucker Durkin, who can come in and be an immediate help to a team. So he would be somebody that even if the Cannons are, say, hanging around 500, he would be a guy that I would just kind of keep my eye out on possibly being traded, because I do think somebody could pick up the phone and have an enticing offer that Ben Rubier would really have to take a look at.
And just one small thing. You're not wrong on Ben Rubier, because I remember last year I said, hey, unless your name's Brown, you're not safe. And then he traded Brown. I was like, well, I guess nobody is safe on that. So, you're right. Rubier's willing to take a phone call from anyone, for anyone, and who knows? You know what I mean?
Yes, I think, Jordan, like you said, I think a lot of it will have to be determined on the field as far as how some of these teams have their seasons play out, especially a team like the Atlas 1-1. Big weekend coming up in week 3. You got to play the Whipsnakes and the Cannons. So depending on how that weekend goes, that could really shift how their season goes moving forward. A team like the Chaos 0-3, Chrome 0-2, et cetera, et cetera. So I think how these teams play out over these next few weeks will definitely dictate that. But yeah, like you said, I think it's going to be more beneficial to them, at least in season, to hit the player pool, those restricted lists, like you mentioned, being able to pull some guys from that, like we saw this past weekend. Nobody really knew that was a thing until it happened either, which I thought was interesting. But apparently that's kind of out there for these teams now to take advantage of too. So I think, like you said, more in season, if we're talking trades, probably not going to see too many happen, at least not too many big ones that'll happen. But getting on to some of these other comments, we got one more. I kind of mashed this one all into one long one because they're all from the same person. So I kind of just took them all and just made them one long thread. So we'll kind of work our way through this one. From Michael Ramirez on Twitter, he says, as an Atlas fan, I guess the biggest question is, what's the current status on Jeff Teat? So let's hit that one really quick before we get to some of the other ones he has for us. And Phil, we can start with you.
Yeah, it's a little tough to say. I'm not up to date with the border stuff or anything like that and where that is at this moment. But I can tell you this, the second he gets across that border, he's going to be wearing blue and he's going to be on turf or grass and he's going to be out there looking for that ball. I mean, I'm sure, are dying to get him on the field. The fans are dying to watch him. So in terms of real life, where he is in terms of getting there, I'm not sure. I'm not up to date on the borders. All I know is once he does get across, I mean, chin straps on, cleats are on, he is out there.
Yeah, right there with you. I'm not exactly sure what the border situation is. I think in his case, it may be more of a visa thing because don't forget, he was at Cornell during the spring and U.S. lacrosse. I believe it was either inside lacrosse had an article about how he was spending most of his spring at Cornell. So I'm not sure if it's border issue, visa issue. All this stuff kind of gets mumbled jumbled with a lot of these guys. But like you said, the second he gets on the field, he's going to be an immediate impact for the Atlas. And, I don't think it's, I've seen some people speculate, is he holding out? As far as I know, it's definitely not a holdout situation. He would have been on the holdout list like a guy like Curtis Corley is right now. So I definitely think it's just a matter of border situation, the visas, getting all that paperwork, getting all that situation handled. And then we would potentially see a guy like Jeff Teat on the field who, when he does get on the field, he's going to be a star for the Atlas.
Yeah. And to your guys' point about the travel restrictions and the border restrictions and things like that, I do remember seeing, because of course lacrosse Twitter kind of blew this up when it happened about a week or two ago, was that they said around this time, maybe within the next 3 or 4 days, that there was something going on with the borders to Canada and everything, and being allowing more access in and out and all that. So that's when people started saying, okay, now the Chaos are going to start getting those reinforcements. Now we're going to start seeing Jeff Teat be able to come over and things. So I'm not really sure where that's gotten us since that news broke, or if things have changed within now between back then, about 2 weeks ago, I believe it was. So it'll be interesting to see, because if that's true and they want to fast track getting those guys back into the rotation in the league, you could be seeing them next weekend, possibly in Baltimore. So that'll be something really interesting to watch out for when we hit next Monday, and even on later in the week when they announce the week 3 rosters for these clubs, to see if some of those guys are in fact present on those 19-man rosters. But then his next question from the same person, Michael Ramirez, says, also, is it a win if Atlas can split the weekend games? They have 2 this weekend. So is it a win if they can split those 2 games? Jordan, we can start with you.
Is it a win? Yes and no, because I think any team wants to win both of those games, right? This is a competitive league. So, and I don't think the boys are going for moral victories. So I think, a win to them is winning both games. With that being said, knowing how good these teams are, I don't think Ben Rubier is going to have his head down if they go 1-1. Because that means you've either beaten the Whip Snakes, who are the best team in the PLL, who have been, or you're beating a really good Cannon squad. And, you're putting yourself, as, it's scary to think about it, but with only a 9-game season here, you're talking about that postseason race coming, it's going to start to get talked about more here. And you're putting yourself in a prime position there, seeding-wise and whatnot, early in the season. So you get a win against one of those teams, you're really putting yourself in a good position. But I think a true win is, at least how the guys are going to go into it, is you want to win both games. But if they go 1-1, I think heads will be held high, and they'll come out of that feeling a lot better about themselves. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a win if they can split it, if they can go 1-1 on the weekend. I mean, obviously we all want to go 2-0, that's what it is. But I think if they can split it, that's absolutely a win. This is a team that's come in last place the last 2 years in a row, right? And so for this team, getting a win it feels good. Like, it's not like the Whip Snakes. They expect to win. They win. They call it a day. They go eat some, I don't know, tuna or something like that at the local shop, whatever. But the Atlas right now, any win, it is like, it's a special thing. It gives you a boost. It feels great. And they're playing real teams. We're not talking about they're going to play this week and play Chrome and Chaos, who both don't have a win yet, in which case you kind of have to win both to feel good. And this upcoming one, if they can get a win from either one, that is I think making a statement. It's saying like, okay, Atlas had one. Now all of a sudden they're showing another this weekend. Maybe this is a real team. But it also gives the team that sense of pride of, hold on a minute. Like, the Bulls are starting to run, baby. So hang on. You know what I'm saying? So I think if they can go 1-1, it's going to feel great. And if they can take down the Whips, they take down the Whips. I mean, lacrosse Twitter, lacrosse world will crumble. Our sticks will disintegrate because nobody will see it coming. But damn, would that be awesome just for the sake of the sake of what would happen afterwards. But anyhow,
I can't wait to see what the money line's going to be. If I were a betting person, depending on what that money line is, I'll call it right here. I might sneak you. If I were a betting person, because in Maryland the laws are still sticky. If I were a betting person, I may take the Atlas cover, depending on what that is. If it's within 4 goals, I would take it. Just
put a buck down. Why not?
I'm not a betting advisor. Bet at your own risk. I'm not responsible for any bad bets. But if that spread is within 4, I would bet the Atlas on that. So keep an eye out.
Yeah, I think the Atlas are a good team, and we'll find out. We'll find out. Are they clicking, or is that just a win they happen to get? But either way, they go 1-1 on the weekend. The Atlas fans and the Atlas team should be happy.
Yeah, and real quick before we move on, I actually have I have 2 more questions I want to get to you guys, but I want to answer Michael's final question here that you guys just wrapped up for me real quick. As an Atlas fan, I think, which Michael obviously is, he's an Atlas fan as well, but I think for me, going 1-1, like you guys said, as long as in the loss they don't perform poorly, if they can make it a close game and make it interesting to watch and make it enjoyable, not like the game we saw 2 weeks ago against Archers, if they can do that and at least go 1-1 but make it look good while doing it, I'll be more than happy with that, knowing that they still have 5-6 games left, whatever it is, going forward. Because 2-2, when you look at a team like the Chrome or the Chaos, wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if you were 2-2 in your first 3 weeks of the season. But for me, I think, and I've talked about this a lot on the past couple episodes now, is just seeing that continued improvement, fixing things from week to week, and saying, hey, we didn't do so good at this last week. Let's work on that and be better at it this week. And I think you saw that even more so than I could have really expected in that game against the Redwoods, is that they came out, they played hard, they played focused, and you really saw that chemistry starting to build a little bit. So I think going into week 3, playing these 2 very tough opponents in the Whip Snakes and the Cannons, that's going to be especially important. Is how do they execute? Do they win ground balls? How are they going to do at the face-off stripe against guys like Nardella? And how do they play together? How's the chemistry look? So that's things that I'm going to be looking for, especially after the way they looked in week 1, is just show me that constant improvement is really what I'm looking for the rest of the way. But now I've got 2 more questions that I want to get to really quick before we wrap up. I know I said that I wanted to push this question into this last segment about Paul Rabel and Rob Pennell specifically, because Phil, you touched on that back in segment 1. But for me, it's right now, these are 2 of the top 5 point scorers in the league. Pennell's number 1 with 13. Rabel's tied for 5th with 9. Is this something that we can expect to see from them the rest of the way, or is this them just getting off to a hot start and maybe they'll cool off as the season progresses? Phil, we can start with you.
Yeah. I think, like any player, usually there will be a down point. There might be a game where one of them doesn't get a goal or an assist, something like that. But these guys are playing out of their minds. They're in a great system that fits for them. So I think even if they have a down game or 2, I think they will bounce back and they'll keep going. I think they're strong players. What's amazing to me is last year with Rabel, we saw him making bad passes, poor shot decisions. It's just like little mental things that were keeping him from excelling, keeping his team from kind of excelling, things like that. Those things aren't showing up this year. He is attacking that goal at every time he can. He's attacking, he's getting a shot off, or he's attacking and passing it, or something along those lines. And it has been like he is really revigorated, like he's alive. He's back to what he was. And Pinnell, on the other hand, he's in a different system where you have Jules coming in from the box. I think maybe Jules coming in from the box has really, really helped his game because defenses have to honor that. They have to come out. Jules will probably get a long stick, but that means Miles Jones and Sergio, who are big-bodied dudes, like they are big dudes, are going up against shorties, which means they are able to push them around a little bit. So defenses are really having to pay attention to where everyone's on the field for the Redwoods. And because of that, I think Pinnell's taking advantage. And either way, these two guys are now in places that make them successful. And God bless, it's fun to see the vets back dominating. I love it. I think it's great.
Yeah.
Right. I'm right there with you. You talked about their systems are set up for them to succeed, right? You talk about the Redwoods and Rob Pinnell. You finally have him in a position where he is able to be his best as a feeder. And, you talk about a guy like Rabel. I think they mentioned it on the broadcast a few times. This offensive coordinator, Sean Kerwin, who is also the offensive coordinator at Virginia, has kind of put him in that Ian Laviano off-ball role, which has played really well to Rabel's strengths as a finisher. There's a guy who is people forget how great of a feeder Paul Rabel is, and you've seen that, him feeding guys like Andrew Hugh, like Lyle Thompson and whatnot. So their systems are set up for their success. Like you said, could there be an off game? Sure. But I think when you get down, I think they will both of those guys will be in top 10 in points in the PLL this year. And they will both be in the running for most improved player, that award coming late in the year.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Real quick before we get to the last question, we'll wrap up here on Taking the Field with Stevie Mac. Just my thoughts on this. If you've listened to past episodes, these past couple episodes, I've talked about this a little bit in that you guys both kind of touched on it with the offenses that they're now a part of after being a part of the Atlas a year ago, or even in Rabel's case, 2019, as well as that. They're in a system now with guys around them where they no longer have to be the guy. They can settle for being the fourth or fifth guy at times on that offense because of who they have around them and how good those other guys are. And like you guys said, those other guys make them better because they're there. They give them different matchups, different looks that maybe the Atlas weren't capable of giving them. So I think that has played a lot into it as well. But like Phil said, I mean, seeing these guys back playing at a high level, being successful, a part of these new teams has been a great thing for us as fans, and I think great things for the sport as well. So my last question for you guys real quick as we begin to wrap up the show is, what do the Chaos and the Chrome, two teams that are winless so far through the first 2 weeks, what do they need to do specifically to get back on track and start to dig their way out of that basement that they've dug for themselves? Jordan, we can start with you here.
In the Chrome's case, I think it's just more of a consistency thing. I think they fell victim to a lot of runs, frankly. And look, out of all the teams in the league, unfortunately, they've gotten bit by the injury bug the most here. And, so hopefully they insert a guy like Tommy Palsak in, who is a great player as sort of the Jordan Wolf replacement. Colin Heacock, having him back at his natural position of attack will serve him well. I think he's better suited there versus coming out of the box. Defensively, we'll see with the Chrome. The Chrome and the Chaos, there are two pitfalls so far in defense. Defense injuries in the Chaos case, the border. But, for the Chrome, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to put a pulse on it because you see them go on. They're this team that goes on these good runs and gives these teams good games and whatnot, but then it all seems to fall apart somewhere, whether it's the middle of the game or the end of the game. So I think Tim Sudan and those guys will figure it out. Maybe is there a goalie change in store? I don't know. I think Sean Scanoni is too good to be on the bench right now, frankly, in my opinion. So, with all due respect to the great John Galloway, who is a great player, I think that is something to keep your eye on because maybe that could just give the defense a little bit of a boost, just having in the new goalie and somebody that can control. Yeah, just having another guy in there to kind of get the defense more energy and riled up a little bit more. And then in the case of the chaos, I mean, look, it's no secret that Blaze is just seeing way too many shots. We talk about Blaze being the best goalie in the league. Well, he's seeing the most shots in the league, and it's not close. And so, the Chaos have Jack Rowlett. They have my hometown guy, Johnny Surdick, and Jared Newman. I've made that take before about him on defense. I think he would thrive at LSM. I think he's a good defender, but I do think he would thrive at LS, moving him up to LSM. You saw them finally give Coates a pole, which people forget that Coates played well with a pole in the bubble. So having him with the shorty was kind of just confusing there, right? Then you talk about the face-off X for the Chaos, and Max Adler, it's taken them a little bit to get used to the PLL rules, that style of play. He struggled in the first couple games. Then they went with a guy in Gallagher who was okay, but they still have to get things figured out from that standpoint. I know Andy Towers, being a former face-off guy himself, he's somebody that's going to focus on that. Maybe he does swing a trade for another face-off guy. Maybe he goes and maybe he tries to go get his old guy TK back. I'm not saying that would be the best move, but it's a guy that he's familiar with, right? So I think from that standpoint, and then you talk about the potential weapons on offense that the Chaos could be getting back. That could be their key to be getting better. But I definitely think here sooner they're going to have to address the face-off position, which I still think is odd because if Max Adler gets into his own, he was the best face-off man in the MLL the last 2 years. And if they give him a chance to get back in there and kind of just get used to those rules, granted, he hasn't played great. And in this league, especially with all these players who are sitting at home right now, the leashes are going to be shorter now. And so, but if Max Adler somehow finds his way back into the lineup, starts having some success, just watch out for the Chaos.
Yeah, absolutely. Phil, what do you got?
Yeah. For the Chrome, there's a lot of agreement, right here between me and Jordan as I was listening. But the Chrome, I think they're a good team, but for some reason, one of the things I mentioned for them early before the season started is stay the course because they lost in the tournament last year, but they really picked up during the season. They were doing a lot of good things and doing them right. And this year, it's like they're things like missing. It's like the gears are kind of stuck. Like they're kind of going, but we just can't get it moving. And I know there's injuries. I understand that. But you picked up Tommy Palisak, I think, which, by the way, I coached his little brother. Not a big deal. But you put Palisak at X, and now you've got Gutty and you've got Heacock. I'm a huge Heacock fan, by the way. The guy is built like an ox, and he's fun to watch. And you put Palisak back there, who is a switchblade. Once you get Wolf back there, you can have Palisak coming in from the box. But you have to get Wolf back to do that. But in any event, I think that there's got to be someone's got to figure out the team identity. We all got to gather. Like we got to become a unit. What as a team are we missing mindset wise? Because right now things, like I said, they're not quite there. Something I couldn't really pick it up. It's just they aren't clicking. Now when we come to Chaos, like I said, there's a lot of agreement. Blaze is just taking shots like the other team's just at practice and there's no defense there. And, they're just picking up a ball and shooting it. It's the guy is just, it's unfair, and it's tough because I'm sure that goalies in any level feel a level of responsibility. But when the other team is just having free range, as a goalie, that's tough, man, especially at this level. The Chaos defense has got to pick it up. they've got to pick it up. If the other team's going to get a shot, it needs to be a contested shot. There cannot be all these free hands, catch it, rip, free hands, doing however they want. You got to get on there. And if that means laying someone out to kind of give that boost to the defense, it needs to happen. I don't want to see anyone get hurt, but like something needs to happen to get that juice going a little bit. The chaos offense, I mean, I'm going to say it. I feel like it looks a little selfish. I feel like guys get the ball and they decide that they're going to go by themselves. We'll pass it around and then I'm going to catch it and I'm going to dodge and damn it, I'm going to shoot it no matter what happens.
Right.
You know, and I feel like there's a lot of that. And years past, we've seen the behind the back shooting scoring. We've seen the, you know, dodge, bump it. Somehow it goes right through everyone. Other dude catches it and dumps it in. Seen so much of that. But for some reason this year, I don't know if it's because they're losing and everyone wants to be the hero, or everyone's like, we're losing, like, oh, I'm so mad. I'm going to turn this thing around. I'm just going to score. And I don't know what it is. But guys got to start moving the ball a little more and getting possessions, because they get possessions. Not only is that good for the offense, but it's giving the defense a break and it's giving Blaze a break. So, you know, I think there's a lot of pieces missing there right now. And I think they can get the train righted, but they got to do it quick. They don't have the luxury of time anymore. So they better figure it out.
Yeah, so real quick, I'll get my thoughts real quick and then we'll wrap this thing up. We've covered a lot here over this episode. We're 3 segments deep. Probably one of the longer episodes we've ever done here on Taking the Field with Stevie Mac. But again, a lot of content, a lot of great discussion. So I'm all about it. I'll never be mad about that. But just my thoughts real quick on this question that I had for you guys about what the Chaos and the Chrome need to do to sort of get out of the basement of these PLL standings. They're combined 0 for 5 through the second week of the season. Just, you guys touched on it a lot. The turnovers killing both these teams. They're both averaging about 19 turnovers a game. And I believe the Chaos are about 10 shots on goal overall under their turnover total. So obviously the shots to turnovers is way on the wrong side of where it needs to be for them. And the Chrome too, they're about 19 turnovers a game as well. So when they have the ball, they're not making the most of their opportunities to do something with it. And Jordan, you talked about the face-off with Chaos. That's a big one. They're facing off as a team between Gallagher and Adler. They're facing off at about 36%. And that's something that you saw a team like the Redwoods struggle with a year ago. Now they bring in a guy like TD Erlin. They're much better off at that position. So yes, I do agree they might at some point have to look at possibly bringing in somebody new to that group and seeing if they can make things happen at the face-off stripe. But really for them, I think for both teams, it's just being more consistent when you have the ball on offense, not turning it over as much as what you're doing. Because if you don't have the ball offensively, you're never going to score. And right now, the Chaos look like they're having trouble scoring the ball, except for that game last Friday where they had 3 of the 5, I believe it was, 2-pointers. But that'll do it for this episode of Taking the Field with Stevie Mac. Again, we covered a ton of stuff, whether it's the Atlas, the Redwoods, the Archers, Chaos, Chrome, whatever it is, we covered it all for you here on this episode. So Jordan, Phil, thank you guys so much again for taking the time to meet up with me and knock out this episode.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
Thanks, dude. Appreciate it.
So just so you guys know, you can always check out past episodes of the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Anchor, Google, Apple Podcasts, basically anywhere you get your podcasts, you can find us at, and we'll have to get you guys both on here soon again to have another great discussion. But that'll do it for us. We'll talk to you guys later.